the Around the NFL podcast. Maybe this year will be better than the last.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. I'm Greg Rosenthal, sitting in for Dan Hansis in the host chair, surrounded by a room overstuffed with heroes. Mark Sessler, Rachel Bonetta,
Woo!
and Connie Fox.
Hey!
Hit the music. I mean, we have to have the intro music if we're
here.
going to
If we
have
must,
him here.
then fine.
We are here. I just find it interesting that, I'm sitting in this chair and Dan's nowhere to be found. I just find it really
I find
curious.
it interesting that you're talking over Colleen's intro.
That's
That's what we
Mexico.
do. That's
Guys,
the way
I don't
we
know
do
how
it.
this thing
No,
works.
you do
Fine.
talk over it. That's
You can
the
do
way.
whatever you want.
You
Just music,
want to
hang
hear it.
out. We're all together, and it's kind of nice, and I'm giddy about it.
Yeah, that's the idea. Dan's, on a beautiful anniversary trip in an
See, he's
undisclosed
recently talked trash.
locations.
You guys invite me on this show. He's nowhere to be found. I'm just stating that
He's
I find
fleeing
it
from you in theory.
interesting.
I thought
Is he a coward? I don't know.
you had asked you wanted to be like in the inner circle on the Bench with Bonetta podcast.
Correct.
Of course, everyone should check that out.
Correct.
If you like this podcast, you're gonna love that podcast.
It's a great listen.
What could be more inner circle than being part of the 9th annual
I love it. I'm
schedule
happy to be
release
here, boys.
extravaganza?
I'm happy to be here with my gal. Let's go. Let's talk about it.
I mean, do we need to talk about it? It's like it's the day where it's like it's a confection more than any other NFL day of the year. I do enjoy it though, just kind of like getting excited. But Colleen, stopped us before the show and
Yeah.
said she had some very
Pressing matters off the top
important
of the
matters
show.
to really hit us with
Okay,
first. So
so-
you have the floor.
First of all, last podcast, I just got to say, Connor or Mark Sessler, you have to bring back Heat and Light Pod. Like it's got to come back. It was such a fun listen to have you guys together again. And I felt like Mark really was there was a different energy about him. Felt like you were more alive talking to
Yeah, he's
Connor
in love.
Orr.
He's in love with Connor. So
And
anytime he's there.
Appreciated being along for that ride. So I would like for the Heat and Light Pod to come back.
I think either Connor or was pulled from my rib, if that's how that story goes, or vice versa. There is a kinship there. We did 10 episodes, and then we were snuffed from existence for an explanation I can't really discuss further.
Whoa.
Oh,
So the show, the topics would be controversial.
This just
Let's put it that way.
This just got real.
Shout out to a lot of listeners who hit me up because I have now the entire compendium of the Heat and Light podcast.
No.
Oh. How
You're
did
gonna
you
have
find
to
that?
sprinkle
It's
some
on
in.
the internet, or you found it like in the NFL archives?
No, it's on the internet.
Okay.
Twitter user at Juan the Hoosier was the first one to make me aware of a Reddit user whose name is Fonnie Cox, which is funny, who has
Jeez, watch your mouth.
Got a problem here.
has them all uploaded to YouTube under a channel called Heat and Light Podcast Stan. You can go
Okay.
find this on YouTube
Well,
right
why
now.
don't you tweet it out and then pin it to your Twitter account? This is now that you've
Yes.
taken this oath as our
Okay.
podcast
Right, so
producer.
I would never ask you to do something like that, by the way, Justin.
Right, to
Yeah.
Rachel's point, we tacked on an addendum to the list of oaths that he has to listen to every single Heat and Light episode, which is a lot of time wasted for Justin that he was out of because these did not exist. They're
But
back
now
in
he-
existence. Have a nice weekend.
Otherwise, you wouldn't understand all of our there's a chance we make a inside joke 18 months from now, and we want you to be prepared for it.
Wow.
Graver is just drowning in work now from tasks that you guys are giving
That
him.
was all you had to bring up. That was the pressing matter.
now that I
well,
look
that's very
at
dismissive, by the way,
I'm
Greg.
just saying it sounded
Exactly.
important.
It's
It's-
slightly
you should
dismissive.
show some
we
more
have
support.
we have a schedule that needs to be released.
Hold on, I have one pressing thing before we get started. I know
Okay,
that this is an audio medium, but I feel like Mark's giving me Jeff Probst on Survivor today.
Yeah.
The shirt?
The
Yeah, I love
whole,
it.
the attitude.
His shirt matches our matcha.
The
everything.
attitude.
Oh, you're just giving a little Jeff.
I don't quite know what that means because I haven't watched Survivor since about 2003. So I'm taking that as a
Jimmy,
You're
positive.
missing
but-
out. It's still alive
Wasn't
and
he
well.
kicked off because he had some
I think
off-field
he's
issues?
come back.
Oh,
I think
okay.
he's come back. I
Okay,
think he
I
was
might
a
be mixing
mainstay.
up.
You're
reality
definitely
shows.
mixing that up. Jeff
Cesar's
is
shirts are always.
Yeah, wait, no, that was The
target.
Bachelor. Jeff's like
Okay.
an actual good guy, right?
Jeff's a great guy.
I don't think he's been canceled.
No, definitely not.
Mark, on the other hand.
So did you have
Not
another
yet.
one, Colleen? You
Well,
said you had
now
two
that I look
things.
at my list of pressing matters, my notes just say passenger landed a plane in Florida with no flying experience whatsoever.
I
And then
saw
something
that.
about tattoo talk.
Okay.
But I don't know.
You can also mix these things in during the show, too.
Okay,
That's like
let's
another
do
way to
that.
go like off topic.
I
here.
like that. I like that there's no rules when Dan's here.
I like the
When Dan's
airplane
not
bullet
here.
feels
point.
really
It's
off
nice.
the rails.
It does feel like the
Yeah.
kids are just playing. There's no organization. If you're listening to this, that means the schedule is out. We are taping this before the show, before the actual schedule was released, because we're very special people. We got early copies of the schedule, like every season, and this is the 9th annual edition, Justin tells me. He went back and counted them up. They always make the producers turn off all the cameras so that it's not
So
going
secret.
throughout the building. They warn us if they can trace any leaks of the schedule to us.
Fired.
Like if Canadians start tweeting it out
No,
a lot,
don't
then
put that
they're
out
gonna be like,
there.
that's
Right.
on Bonetta.
No, don't put that out there,
And
you
then
guys.
we get in big trouble. But if you're listening to this, that means it was just released. So let's dive into it. Let's dive into week 1. I feel like week 1 is always the right place to start because I'm like a small child. I can't focus on too many things at once. We're going to be talking about week 1 for the next 4 or 5 months. And beyond that, it's like it's too far in the future. Mark, why don't you get us started? Like something that excites you about week 1.
Well, I think like it started the very first game because I think some of the kickoff games have slightly been underwhelming, depending on, like they've just not always been the greatest matchup of all time, depending on like the visiting team. The Bills at the Rams is pretty much the best thing you could have asked
Love it.
for.
Love
Yeah, that's so fun.
There's a chance
We've
we're
got people fist bumping in the control
Sure.
room here. People
What's
are
not
excited.
to like? There's no weak point
The
here
same
because
group was literally like not paying attention to Mark and I's podcast the other day, like whatsoever.
Oh, they had other things going on mentally, but this is a different show. It's about different things. Bills at Rams. I mean, it's the Super Bowl winner against the team that many thought should have gone from the AFC and will go this year. So there you go.
I like that one. That's a great one. You have Matthew Stafford hasn't played the Bills as a Ram yet. You have the Von Miller aspect, which really doesn't matter that much.
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
like a huge revenge game. He was only there for not even a full season.
I feel like they
However,
did him like a
I think there's
huge
gonna be a
favor, and he
lot
did
of
them a huge
love.
favor.
Yeah,
Some of
there'll be a
these.
lot of
he like
love.
cashed in because of that. However, when I look at week 1, Broncos at Seahawks. I'm losing my voice. Broncos at Seahawks. They went for it week 1.
I
You
can't
have
believe-
Russell Wilson right off the bat going back to town. I love that.
It feels like we're getting spoiled with that one. Like I feel like we should be forced to wait for that one a little bit. But they're giving it to us right away. The one that I'm excited about, Mark, I don't know if you're feeling the same way, but I want to see what these Browns look like week 1. I feel like I dated somebody hot and heavy in high school, and now it's like the 10-year
Wait,
anniversary.
but I thought the whole thing is you're looking for a new team.
Listen, I just want to see if did they get
Oh,
fat?
You still,
Did they
I
get
love
too
the
much
way you're putting
Botox
it.
in their face?
Right.
Are they a mess?
And
That's what I want to see.
they have-
I want to see them flailing.
They've buried Cleveland in terms of national exposure on this schedule. They have 2 primetime games and a bunch of hidden away contests, and I think we know why.
Wow.
But I love this idea. Let's say something goes wrong.
Because they sold their souls to go
Right.
get the
Let's say something goes wrong with the Panthers quarterback situation, which is not hard to, between now and then, an injury,
what
whatever.
could go right? What is
because they're not aiming for Baker Mayfield in theory at this point. But if they lost Sam Darnold, so let's say they sign Baker Mayfield, and you get your 10-year high school reunion Cleveland Browns version going up against Baker Mayfield, who would be like the third guy in that love triangle.
Picture, that Elmo gif when he's like in fire? Like that's going to be Mark and I like,
if Baker Mayfield beats the Browns in week 1 as a
I
member
would
of the
maybe
Carolina
cry.
Panthers,
I would cry.
Would you be a
I think
Panthers
I would
fan?
cry.
At that
We would
point?
cry.
that could maybe sell
I
me
would be
on
so
that.
happy. You can't roll out Sam Darnold to play football again in 2022. Just do it. We know that they were interested. They were talking trade during the draft. They weren't willing to take on all of his salary, and the Browns weren't willing to pay like half of it, whatever the Panthers asked for.
That
but
can
that
all
means
change.
they would that means they would accept him at some point. The Browns are at the point where they just got to give up the ghost. They lost this. Like you're a big loser this offseason for everything that you've done, Browns, and you're going to get your wins in the future. At least you believe so, like with Deshaun Watson. But the whole Mayfield thing's over. Like it's such a distraction. He should show up to work and just like be a pain in the ass so that they have to get rid of him and so that he ends up on the Panthers
would do
week
that.
1. That would
That's
be
a good
great.
one. I also really like Patriots at Dolphins. That seems.
No, I hate that.
That's always
Why?
fun.
That's
Come
super
on.
Mike
juicy.
McDaniel's
Dolphins always-
grand entrance. You
Mike
have
McDaniel versus Belichick in his first ever game.
exactly.
Yeah, but
I
aren't
get
the
it, but it's-
Patriots like always crappy when they play the Dolphins? Like, don't the Dolphins
Always.
have a way better
Dolphins
record
always
against
win.
In Miami.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's fun.
That's true. But it's also the 3rd straight year that this has been the week 1 game. It's just an annoying, weird subplot to me as
You're
like
over
a
it?
Patriots fan that they keep doing the same matchup every year. I mean, it's been like different quarterback matchups depending on the year.
Aren't these Dolphins different though?
Yes.
With Mike McDaniel having
So
to deal
different.
with Belichick,
Like
I
the
kinda dig
Dolphins
that.
in general are interesting. I just don't like that big of a division game, Miami, where they always lose like right off the bat, and it's
Miami,
the
that's
same.
right.
It's the same thing year after year. I'm with you though on the Russ versus Pete Carroll thing. Week 1, maybe they were kind of thinking how I thought. Like we're small children, we can't like it can't like hold our attention in terms of this revenge rivalry. Why wait till week 9? Maybe the Seahawks aren't going to be good by then either, so it's got every like ounce of juice that you can possibly have. But I love it because Russell Wilson's on the Broncos because ultimately Pete Carroll didn't really believe Russell Wilson is as good as Russell Wilson thinks he is. And he's also on the Broncos because Russell Wilson doesn't think Pete Carroll's as good a coach as he thinks he
I
is. Like,
love that.
and it's just true. Like they did not think Russell Wilson is a top 5 type of quarterback anymore, and so they were willing to do this. And he gets to like prove them wrong in Seattle. Oh, I
That's
love it.
petty.
I do think that when they
That's
meet
right.
and like hug and stuff like that, it's gonna be boring. Like they're both so
Oh, they'll be
like
nice about
polite,
it.
and
Right.
it'll be nice. Like when like Belichick faced off against Brady last year, we were all like, oh my god, are they gonna hug? Are they gonna
Right.
kiss their cheeks?
they gonna make
like,
out?
What are they
Right.
gonna do?
And it's like the most excruciating.
Kiss on their cheeks. I
Kiss
would
on their
have loved
cheeks.
to have witnessed that.
Kiss on the forehead would have been
I was
nice.
trying to decide what I wanted to say, and that's what came out. That's
The
what
next
came
4
out.
months too for Seahawks fans, like knowing that this is first and it's home. You can already see Seahawks fans. I've noticed some that are rooting against Russell Wilson a little more than they expected. Like of course they loved everything that he did for him, but now that they're seeing him like have the cheesy videos with Ciara where he doesn't know whether his dog is male or female, and that's not a great dog.
At least
I think
they've
if you're gonna pick a
They've
dog,
stopped dancing. I feel like
right? They
there was a
picked Bronco,
time where
like,
there was a lot of dancing happening, and that was making
I
me
can't
Bad
watch
face.
it. I
Seahawks-
can't watch any of the
Ferociously
videos.
Seahawks fans are like, great, that's not our problem again. If we win week 1 with Geno Smith against Russell Wilson,
That's
everything
Geno.
feels
Hold
better.
on, Greg. One thing: Seahawks fans right now are completely in space because I tweeted out that they had a quarterback scenario that was a problematic thing. You got Drew Lock or Geno. I know you love Geno so much, but all these fans like, you don't understand. The Seahawks have a plan. It's a trenchant plan. You're blind to what they're doing. I'm like, talk to me in week 5 when they're 1-4 and they're trying to still sell Drew Lock to us as an actual entity.
If that happens, does Pete Carroll? I feel like it's so weird to see the Seahawks without Pete Carroll. Obviously, he's getting older. He's going to have to retire at some point. But like, if the Seahawks are really bad this year, is he still there?
I feel like they gave him the power to go through whatever this
I think
rebuild
there
is to
could be
some
an
degree.
ownership
They're going to let him
change.
kind of
Yeah.
have.
I mean, at this stage, right?
There's word like the Allens, Paul Allen died, their former owner, and they're supposedly going to sell the Trailblazers or the Seahawks potentially next. I think that's partly why Pete Carroll is still there. Is like they just didn't want to deal with.
I
all
think
of
the
that,
Seahawks think that they're going to be good.
Yes, I do too.
Right.
Like
and
they
I think,
legitimately
are?
and
think it.
I kind of
I do
think
like
they'll
Geno.
find some way to win 8 or 9 games, which is about what they did last year, and everyone will like raise it up as like, oh, it's a great job by Pete Carroll. Week 1's a lot of fun. You also have Justin Fields and Trey Lance going up against each other from the 2022 draft for like a relatively low octane game. I think that's kind of fun. Eagles Lions.
Yes,
I
because this
think
is going to be
fun.
right after Hard Knocks too. Like
Yeah,
the first
that'll be good.
game of the
Eagle-
season.
2
of a Hard
buzzy
Knocks
teams. You have
Eagles
Bucks.
Lions, you said is going to be fun.
Come on,
I think the
buy
Lions
in.
are really. I think the Lions. I've already thrown it out there. I want to be
The
the
schedule makers don't think so.
the team of around the NFL. Well, right. It's a 1 p.m.
They
game,
have
but like that's the
0
1 p.m.
primetime games. Their schedules like almost every single week is just a 1 o'clock game for
the
the
only
Lions.
team with
That's
no
sad.
prime time. I feel like that was
The Lions.
it's
Yeah.
unrewarding because
Only
they were
team.
fun down the stretch last year.
Right. Like that week 1 game is absolutely fun.
It is.
It was not a fun matchup when they played last year, though.
They're also just a fun team to root for, whether they're fun on the field. Like they've just got such characters, and we're going to get to
Yeah.
know all of those people way better.
Oh, that's
this
true because
year.
of Hard Knocks.
That's what I'm saying. Like the first game of a Hard Knocks team.
That will be good.
is
It's like the
always a
NFL
blast.
saying, HBO, we're bigger than you too.
I know that is surprising because I think they're going to be fun, and I think the Eagles are going to get overrated by a lot of people like me who already see them as like a top 8 team in the NFL.
Really?
I'm very into the Eagles. Bucks and Cowboys, by the way, are the Sunday night game there, so they are definitely swinging for the fences, just like going for monster ratings right away. Let's go to Thanksgiving. We always kind of
Also, by the way, real quick, Raiders Chargers. Did we mention that one?
Oh, that one's going to be
That's
really
great.
good.
That's a great one.
They ended their season together.
Full circle. They end where they begin where they ended.
I
Also,
also love Steelers at Bengals because for 20 years, that's been the week 1 or week 2 thing where Pittsburgh goes in and just wins 40-7 to get going.
What's
Now
Pittsburgh
they're
even
in
gonna
space
look
on
like?
some level, and everyone is starting to know the Bengals actually last year was a magic ride that won't translate to this season. I don't agree with that.
Disagree. Yep.
I could talk week 1 the whole time
I know,
because to me,
truly.
week 1
Could go
is
through
the
every
best
game.
week of the year. I think it's always the best week on the football calendar. You got the most football to go. Everyone is so like fresh and new. Nothing's been ruined. Hopefully, people aren't injured.
It's like sensory overload, though. Usually
it's a little
too.
much.
Like
It's a little
week
much
1.
with these games in prime time. That is
I hear
maybe
that.
the best primetime slate possible. Bills, Rams, Bucks, Cowboys, Broncos, Seahawks. That's pretty awesome. Let's go to Thanksgiving next. Just because I think of that, I think of our family. Like it's my favorite holiday in general, and they go back to the Bills in a big spot. The Bills have 5 primetime games, and they're on Thanksgiving this year, which is exciting. It's Bills Lions, so that's the Lions' big moment. They don't get their primetime game, but more people watch that game than any game all year usually. Even
it's
though
historically
the Lions are
not
involved.
been a
That is
big-
the number 1 game of the
It's
year.
not been a big
Wow.
moment for the Lions, like 20 out of 24.
I'm just
of the
saying
last
it's the most
Thanksgivings,
people
but-
watching. Even when it's like, who was your guy David Blau and the Blauhards the other year? Like people just they're
Blauhards.
stuck and they watch that game. You have Giants Cowboys for the millionth time on national television, and then Patriots Vikings as the nightcap. Do we have any thoughts here?
I'm kind of excited to see where the Cowboys are at in November. I believe, this could be wrong, I believe they have one of the easier strength
do.
of schedules. We're giving the Cowboys everything. They're like, here's all of these gifts. You've got this incredible schedule. Jerry, here you go. Let's see what you do. So I feel like by Thanksgiving, we will have a good indication on, are they going to throw it away again?
They usually do after the playoffs. This is a Dan kernel that he likes to throw out there. Just like literally, they've never followed up a playoff season with another good season
Well,
under
they
Jerry
flipped
Jones.
That's like the NFC
Forever.
East.
They're
too,
horrible
in
with
general.
success. They start feeling themselves. And I think the NFC East, like the Cowboys are listed as, one of the easiest strengths of schedule. The entire NFC East is. Because they get to play each other. So the best one
Right.
to me would be the Eagles and the Cowboys because they don't have to play themselves. They get to play the rest of the division. And then out of the division, they play the AFC South, which is as easy as it gets. Sorry, Graver. And the NFC North, which maybe isn't the easiest NFC division. You could argue the South, but that's the easiest combination of out-of-division schedule. So the entire NFC East wins. I like the idea of Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins on Thursday night.
I do too, but the one thing about the schedule, it's like, hey, let's look at a game in like early December, be like player X versus player X. Can't wait to see that. The chances are half these teams are shattered health-wise by then, and we're
say
projecting.
that.
But it's true.
It's supposed to be a fun day.
I know,
Mark.
but that's
I
why
we're celebrating.
there is an element
Jeff
to this
Probst
that is
energy right now.
whatever. Like that's
Is
that's,
Probst the big like kind of downer? I mean, I don't know.
I've
I didn't take
completely
him for
made
that.
up a story about Jeff Probst. I don't know anything about the man. I just keep on saying
Like
it.
Mark is the one who always puts in his sandwich propositions predicting the season that some horrible act is going to either befall a player, a team, or the earth as a whole. And once you were
I
right,
mean-
you pretty much predicted the pandemic. Like you finally nailed it.
It is Survivor
Wow.
after all.
right. I mean, I have no concept with the Jeff Probst thing. I'm going to have to go do some research. I take it as sort of a slight.
It is.
I was
Yeah.
wondering if the Patriots would get as many primetime games as they used to, and the answer is yes.
They got
were.
4 weeks in a row of primetime games late in the
That's
season.
wild.
That is ridiculous.
That is
Oh.
a little outrageous.
I hope they're good.
I do too. I think they will be. I think Mac Jones is going to be better than everyone thinks. But 13 teams have 5 primetime games, which is a lot. And you can end up with 6 if you get moved into Sunday Night Football. But it's 49ers, Bengals, Bills, Broncos, Bucks, Chargers, Chiefs, Cowboys, Eagles, Packers, Patriots, Rams, Steelers. No huge surprise. Probably the best team or the best chance for one of those teams to totally stink and ruin a primetime games, I'm going to go Steelers.
I'm really excited that the Chargers have 5. I feel like they can be something special.
Well, they watched the Rams win.
They have that. They had so many. I talk about this nonstop on our show. They had so many like 1-score games that they lost. Like they were so close.
Your show being Benched with Bonetta.
No, our show.
Oh, Game Day View. Everyone also should check out.
Did you
lot of
forget that we were on a
shows.
show
the Game
together for
Day
a second?
No, I thought that's what you meant, but I didn't know. Game Day View. We have a schedule release show too, which is on all sorts of streaming platforms, and we'll
Ooh.
just be
Yeah,
sitting
we're
there
everywhere
if you want to
Went
find
today.
it on Amazon Prime or Paramount Plus or.
Peacock.
That's on the
Peacock.
big. That's on the
But
big
it'll just-
show, right?
It'll just sit there. No, we're
Oh.
digital only, for the most part.
How
I
did
think
so
they put
many
us on NFL
vehicles
Network.
agree to work together to air this episode?
I don't know.
They wanted the goods,
I
baby.
think they needed
Yeah, it's
something,
obvious.
and they were like, "Well, we're not going to give you Rich Eisen and them, but we will give you this other show."
And we're gonna knock it out of the park.
people should check
That
that out.
show is on NFL Network 11 p.m.
It is.
Pacific
It is
time
on tonight. Yeah.
tonight.
Thank you, Justin.
now.
I didn't know that, and I think it's on Friday as well. I like that Lions game early. Is there any other games though, Mark? You suggested a segment that we could do here today, just randomly picking games that buzz your loins.
Ew. We had
I mean,
totally separate reactions. What?
you could take that to mean what it means.
I mean, if you were picking like one of us to use the word loins in a show, it would definitely be Mark.
It's like I text Greg these things, and then when
was
the
on an
show
email.
arrives,
It was on an
turns
email.
around. He turns around and uses it against me on the actual show. What I sort of mean is it just gets you
Yeah.
going. Okay.
You should be proud of your loins.
I like that whole concept. And I would say this too. Bengals at Cowboys week 2. They've got the Steelers in week 1. And as I mentioned, I think people are starting just to act like the Bengals were maybe not for real last year. I love the uniform matchup, number 1. But this is
That's
going to be
true.
late on CBS. You're going to get Tony Romo announcing this. And the Bengals also closed the season against the Bengals and Ravens. So, like, for me, like, they've got a ton of exciting ones. But if they go in and take care of the Steelers and then take care of Dallas on a national stage, it's like, don't tell me the Bengals aren't legit.
I love that the Bengals have 5 primetime games too, by the way, and there's so many good matchups for Joe Burrow coming up, like Burrow and Brady play for the first time week 15, Burrow and Josh Allen week 17, Burrow and Tua. That's fine since they're like LSU, Bama, whatever. That's week 4. So that's a great one. I'm so excited about week 6, Bills Chiefs. That's like best game of the year. I hope there's no way it's going to live up to what we want it to be, but I want 25 points in the first 2 minutes. So that's how they ended
It'll be
the last
10-9. Like, that's how
I
this
know.
works. It will be a completely different type of game.
I feel weird like picking games at the end of the year. It makes a good point, Mark, that we don't know what's going to happen by then. Week 1 or 2 is like easier to get excited about, but I do kind of love the Chargers Rams like battle.
Yeah,
for
that's what
LA.
I was gonna
Let's
say.
all go.
I'm down.
It's week 17. It's on New Year's Day. The entire slate is on New Year's Day. So you can look at that any way you want, but we could go to that. I think we should go to that.
I want to go.
And one of the reasons I love it, not just because it's the Super Bowl champs and they're both entertaining and it's Herbert, is they sneaky don't like each other. And I don't even think it's
Why would
I don't think it's
they?
sneaky. Yeah.
I don't
Why
think
would they?
I don't think they like to like advertise it, but it's a better sneaky don't like each other because it's not really the players. The players don't care. They like each
It's
other.
like a sibling
it's the
rivalry.
Teams. It's the organizations. It's like the team, the Rams. It's like, hey, we built a stadium. Oh, you want to come like join us? Like the Chargers, whether they like it or not, are forever gonna be the Jets with the Giants when they were like leasing in the Giant Stadium, when it was called Giant Stadium and the Jets had to play there. That is who the Chargers are. They're the little brothers, but they look pretty good. So it's like a fun thing to imagine.
I really think that they need to kind of buy into this rivalry.
Yes.
In Major League Soccer, there's El Tráfico. It's the Galaxy versus LAFC. They have billboards around the city that are like crapping on each other. And it just,
Yes.
you want to go and watch these games. It's like a part of LA versus another part of LA. Like people for some reason hate each other even though we're all in the same city. Like it's fun. Buy into that. More people are going to want to go to these games. That's definitely
lean
something
in.
that's
The Chargers
buzzing my
especially.
loins. Is it?
It sounds
buzzing
like
my loins?
you're buzzing, right?
Sure.
Is that how it?
I don't want to talk about my loins.
I mean, it's May 12th. What else is going to get your loins buzzing?
On vacation?
Bucks Bengals is getting my loins buzzing as well.
That's a nice one.
19-year age gap, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's
gonna be
good.
fun.
I feel like this entire schedule would be so different if Tom Brady hadn't returned, because the Buccaneers are basically in every high leverage spot that they could possibly be in. I like the TNF Lamar versus Brady, Ravens, Bucks. What else you got, Mark, that's buzzing your loins?
I like Chargers Niners. It's a little bit more nerdy, but the idea of Kyle Shanahan versus Brandon Staley, Justin Herbert versus maybe Trey Lance. I just want to see what the Niners are doing at quarterback
like,
at that
yeah.
point.
When is that?
That's Sunday Night Football, Week 10. I mean, that's going to have a lot of meaning. I think the Niners could be a team on the brink at that point. And the Chargers, if they keep winning games like this, to your point, Rachel, I mean, they can start hanging in there with the Rams in terms of how they're viewed.
We also get a Rodgers Brady Week 3. That's another possibility.
Could be the final dance
We
for
get-
those two.
It will.
I have one.
We get the rematch. Go ahead.
The Carson Wentz Revenge Tour.
Yes.
I love that. It stops in Indy Week 8 and Philly Week 10.
Ooh.
I cannot wait. I want to go to that one. That's going to be a Connie Fox on location special.
Connie Fox
I
special.
like that.
That's
It's
one of
paid
those,
all
though,
by Connie Fox.
like those are truly revenge games, because the Colts brass, for lack of a better word, their ownership and their general manager basically made it as clear as possible how they think just getting rid of Carson Wentz is going to save them. And he knows that. And hopefully he's still the starter by Week 8. I'm not totally sure he's going to be the starter there for the entire season, because it might go poorly. But I hope he lasts at least till Week 8 for the Colts and Week 10 Eagles. I like Chiefs Bengals too, Week 13. I feel like that's sort of gotten slept on as the biggest collapse since 28-3. One of the biggest collapses in NFL history. One of the most shocking games I've ever seen since we've been doing this job. I put that right with Seahawks Packers. Even as the two games to me that just stunned me the most as I was watching them. What happened? Like the Chiefs just giving
People
that
treat
up.
Bills Chiefs as the AFC title game, and it wasn't. We all know that, and it's like I'm with you. That the Bengals scenario and what they did to Kansas City, coming out of the second into the second half, was like a epic comeback, and like essentially sealed how magical the Bengals were and unstoppable.
I just cannot get out of my mind during that game being at Lakeisha's with you, Greg, and Lakeisha walking around the backyard burning sage at halftime.
And it was the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, it was the winningest team in the NFL over the last 5 years. The team, I still sort of can't get over that. Rachel, you are so busy. You have so many things that you're doing. You're hosting Game Day View later. You're editing some other piece. You've got the Bench with Bonetta podcast. I should have mentioned at the beginning of the show that we had a special guest that's actually going to be replacing you halfway through. And
Are we
his
gonna
name
tag
is
in?
Patrick Claybon. I want you guys to actually be on the show together
Come on in.
for at least
Tap,
like
tap in.
1
Let's
minute.
get in here.
Because we're going to be making some history here. They said it couldn't be done. Patrick, could you just stand with this headset for a couple minutes before Rachel leaves? And I want to make history here because they said it couldn't be done.
Guys.
Five headsets,
Here we
5
are.
hosts at once. And I don't think you guys have ever been on a program together,
Holy
Rachel and
crap.
Patrick.
I don't
Have
think
you ever
we
met
have.
each other? Have you ever met
we
each
had
other?
a really nice moment at the Super Bowl where we were sitting next to each other for the very first time. And I think I just looked at you and I was like, Patrick, you're very funny.
And
And
I was
he was
like,
like,
Rachel, you're
Rachel,
so funny too.
You're very funny. And I was like, okay. This
And
is
if not for
fun.
Greg Rosenthal and this magical 5th headset, this would have happened.
This is a special moment that we all
Guys.
got to share.
And it's so
together.
nice. And Dan's not here.
Wow.
This might be the best part of all of it.
Tough sitch. Mark and I are too smart to say things
I am
like that.
going to
that could
stay
be
quiet on that.
used
He's
against us.
declaring
It's not
vengeance
fair.
on me.
Wait,
Dan,
Well,
Dan is
Jason?
my friend, by the way.
Right,
so-
we are trying to make up
As are each of
for
you.
how much we miss his presence by overstuffing this show. I don't
Dan
know
just
if
walked
we've
in.
ever
Dan's here.
had this.
Mark looked over his shoulder very quickly.
I thought he was in Mexico last I heard, but
Mark
when the
lives
music
in
starts playing.
total fear of Dan at all moments, even if he's out of the country. Rachel, it's been a pleasure. I
Guys,
don't know if
thanks
you
for
have any
having me.
final thoughts, but we loved having you here, and we have you back on. I know there's been some tension. You weren't happy with the oath that Justin took as our podcast producer.
Did you guys talk that out yet?
We tried to, and I'm so sorry I talked over your intro song. That's what I was trying
That's
to get
all
on
right.
the.
I mean,
I was trying to get it out right away. And it
We're
just didn't-
here, you know.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having
life
me.
is too short to be having.
I will
beef.
only let me make
with
this
you.
proclamation right now. I'm only ever coming back on the show if Dan's not here.
Wow.
Ooh.
Wow.
And you can tell him
That
that.
was bold.
And you can tell him.
I thought this would be a
that.
nice way to like quickly squash that because we have enough beefs. Like Daniel Jeremiah and the little show that he is just started. Like
little-
that's enough.
That's-
That's enough beef in my life. I don't need any more.
Isn't that a hint to you guys though that maybe you need to work on yourselves if you guys have all of these beefs?
Oh my gosh.
Not
I am
not worried about that.
Yeah.
Welcome in,
focused on that.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Okay, here's your seat. Thanks
we're
for
gonna
having me.
we're gonna be more
guys.
introspective as we get older. Clay, but I don't want you to sit the whole show. You should take Rachel's seat. That'll just make everyone feel uncomfortable.
Bye,
One-
banana.
One thing
Bye.
I thought about with Patrick here is that he is such a versatile co-host. He always just sits in for the whole show. He's just another host, just like you, Colleen.
Uh-huh.
You're just another host on the Around the NFL podcast. But there's never like a Claybon themed segment.
Oh.
Back in the day, there was. It was like your tweets.
It was trash take.
Trash
Oh my
takes
God, I
with
forgot
Patrick
about
Claybon.
that.
Literally like 6 years ago.
Whoa.
A golden segment.
No, it was a great segment. But this day where I thought, oh, hey, we got a lot of people in here. Maybe Claybon, he's busy at the news desk. At least I thought he was, and was only going to pop in for 15 minutes. I thought, we got to do a Claybon themed segment. I don't even know what this segment is.
Yeah.
He's surprising me with it, but it's some sort of list of games where Claybon prepared, and I'm excited.
And let's do it right after a break.
That's what the host has to do. I mean, you're
Graver.
making me look bad,
Amazing.
Justin Graver. You can just like me that or text me that. You
I
probably
did.
did, but I've
I
ignored
think
it.
you needed to jump in.
Let's do that
That was
Claybon
good
Greg's
by
screen
you.
is completely black.
segment
Hilarious.
after this break. All right, we're back. You just fast forwarded through all those ads because you just wanted to get to this Claybon
listen.
break in this Claybon segment. What are you treating us with here?
These are games that will be incredible on the twitter.com.
Ooh.
Okay.
Maybe not on paper, but we don't care about paper. Paper isn't real. Tweets are
It's
real.
a construct.
Yes.
I like that you're leaning into it because when I think of NFL games and NFL Twitter, I think Patrick Claybon, a very active, a volume shooter, as
Thank
they
you,
would
Greg.
say.
that it does land, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
Because that is me. I will start. I guess we'll go in the order of days. Because that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Chronological.
September 18th, the Commanders take on the Lions. All right.
Okay, wow.
And nothing gets the juices going on the Bird app like a quarterback who's not good and is not having a lot of success that has been a part of conversations for a really long time. And if Carson Wentz goes to the meltdown land, like the self-destruction land that he finished last season with against the Jacksonville Jaguars, it'll be bad for the Commanders. Of course, it'll be bad for Carson Wentz. It'll be great for Twitter. I think it will make tweeters fun,
Yep.
especially those that have the predilection that Colleen does, right? And
That's
they're-
when I stop my I'm basically on Twitter strike most days, and then I come out and then I become a volume shooter just in like a 2-hour span,
Does
and
it-
then I do a blackout again.
The sneaky story here is like watching Wentz and maybe the Commanders not do well. And look, they haven't had a likable offseason as an organization or a likable last couple of decades, really. So it makes sense, but it sounds like people are ready to root against that. And that could be Lions coming off Hard Knocks, maybe coming off a home win against the Eagles and maybe going for a 2-0 record.
Your one concern is that it's buried on Fox at
Yeah.
1 p.m. Eastern. So
Well, we
I'm
can
not
choose
sure
that.
it's a national movement, but maybe
That'll be
you're
tough.
turning it into that.
Well, what you hadn't considered, though, Mark, is what Carson Wentz is planning to do when he arrives in Washington, which could get the entire nation talking.
As we all know, excited to really go ahead and start to take command.
Oh no.
the panache, my favorite drop.
Actually, yes.
Start to in week 2.
All right, game 2.
All right, let's go to game 2. We'll go to the Jets and the Steelers, and it's perhaps the same premise because it's early, and we might still be getting Mitch at this point
Ooh.
in a huge game at home. And remember the Thanksgiving game a few years back where like Mitch is throwing screens and slants against the Cowboys, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's back, baby! This is the Mitch that was promised." I think it would be hilarious and spectacular and great and good and everything we need to get the timeline going. A little Trubisky fun, right?
Wait.
Claybon, I love this so much.
Yeah,
You are beaming.
You are absolutely choosing games that Claybon will be on fire about, and that I don't know about the rest of America.
Well-
Wait, which game was this again?
Week 4.
Jets.
We got week
Okay.
4. Steelers.
Steelers, October 2nd.
Jets and Steelers. Yeah. I wonder, the Jets schedule
I
here
wonder.
early. The Jets, I feel like people would be into the Jets if they could get interesting this year.
The belief, right? You hear it, they believe, and should they? I don't know.
There's a lot of AFC North teams and fans, I think, that would be happy to see the Steelers completely collapse.
Well, it's time.
Do you think it's going to happen?
No, because that's not really their DNA. I mean, what is a collapse? Like they missed the playoffs,
Winning
but,
like 5 games or something.
I think it's equally
They're starting
possible.
with Bengals, Patriots, at Browns. Let's say they're 1-2 or 0-3 going into that Jets game, and Claybon's right. Trubisky's throwing some bad passes, and they're staring at 1-3. They're trailing at halftime. I could see it.
Trubisky could vibe losing his job in week 1 to Kenny Pickett, though. If
I
not in
might
the
take Pickett to
preseason.
win week 1.
He
Yeah.
could, and it depends on the philosophy and how they go about that. But it's just the chance, the chance that it might happen.
all
And
we
even though
need.
it's buried, and the same with the first game, right? If somebody throws a left-handed interception or does something wacky,
That's true.
then it's good. We're going to see the video, and people are going to make jokes, and it's just good.
People are watching Red Zone anyways. You're
All right.
right.
I will get more. If people think I'm being negative, let's get more positive.
Okay.
On October 9th, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Giants and the Packers. Right?
Yeah, that's good.
I will get personal because if I'm lucky enough to do Game Day Live for another year, that's 3.5 hours every single Sunday where I don't really get to live tweet games. Like I don't get to go into the trance.
You're busy.
Or like on primetime games where I'm dual wielding children and I have to try to get Coco Melon going, right?
Right. You're on
you're very
air
busy.
as the games are on, hosting the show, so that's impossible.
What is
Yes.
Coco Melon?
Consider yourself lucky that you don't know. You don't know.
Okay.
It sends small people into a trance-like state that allows
Is
you
this
to.
a cocktail you give them?
No, it's a YouTube thing. It's a video.
it.
Which is a cocktail in a way.
But when they are asleep,
Mm.
and along with the rest of the world, and I can sneak into the garage and really go into Twitter, right, and watch a game and live tweet it, that is special. And I know that there's probably a whole bunch of other parents on the West Coast that would really look forward to that opportunity. And so I think that's a great Twitter day, a nationally, globally televised. We'll make it the entire Milky Way. Shout out to
It's
the
a
picture
network
of-
game too.
Yeah.
Nice
Multiple
network
galaxies
game.
is
Giants
arrogant.
Packers.
Yeah, we got a picture of Sagittarius A-star earlier today, right? They have a photograph of the black hole at the center of our galaxy. Maybe it's the biggest game in the galaxy at that time, right? Even though time
See,
is
this
relative.
is where I often say Claybon is too smart for the job he has, and once again,
Is this still the Around the NFL podcast?
I'll save it for the space time
The
podcast.
astrology.
But seriously, it's a good opportunity to take it back to like my late 20s and live tweet a football game. And that was
Claybon time, I think that sounds valuable to us and to you.
I think Giants could be more watchable this year. I've thought
They
this
better
for
be.
a few years, and I've been wrong because I think Daniel Jones has a watchable couple of seasons in his career in him. I think he's a relatively entertaining player if he was in the right system. And it doesn't get much more right than Brian Dable
Yeah.
and spreading out the field and all these. He's got like 4 slot receivers. I don't know how that's going to work. Kadarius Toney, Sterling Sharp, Wan'Dale Robinson. It's like, and there's no one really on the outside. There's Galladay. But I think they're just going to throw the ball like 60 times a game, throw it to Saquon. It's in Tottenham, one of our favorite places to go. Maybe we'll
Sure.
be at this game, Mark. Maybe
Pack
you
me
too.
in your suitcase, please.
Okay, this time maybe you can come. Maybe you can pull it off.
Maybe I'm gonna.
You're
strap
usually
myself
busy.
To
You're
the
usually
wing of a
busy
plane.
traveling all around the country, so you're a hard person to get. But maybe we can get you for this one.
Okay.
This would be a good one. And
Get Colleen to Tottenham.
That's it.
These early
Maybe not in a suitcase. Like you could just
we
go
could
as a
put
human
you in
being
a
in a
seat.
ticket.
You could put me in the overhead.
Claybon
But I
is
don't know why you keep
speaking,
suggesting these scenarios, but
as a parent here, because you're right. The 6:30 a.m. game, as I've gotten older, is like actually I enjoy that game. I'm happy to wake up for that game.
What?
It's quiet in the house. I'm totally with you. That at first I was like, like I was, it was almost like showing your professionalism by waking up for the beginning of Bengals Dolphins there. But now I'm totally into it. There's no other games that are that quiet and like you can just watch football.
It's like Christmas morning. You get an opportunity to really to really enjoy something.
Colleen,
Kind of cuts into my sleep schedule a
Yeah,
little bit,
Colleen,
so it's fine.
Colleen
I'll-
has never watched the first half of a London game. That is for sure.
You can be real about that.
All right, game 4.
Also, on October 9th, after maybe people have gotten rested up, the Seahawks visiting the New Orleans Saints. It's a matchup that we don't get to see a whole lot, and similar theme. Drew Lock in the dome against a really good defense.
Drew Lock.
What is wrong with you?
What do you mean? It might be
Yeah.
bad. It might also be funny. And it's not that I'm against these guys in any way. I want to see people who are good at football have success. I can't help that it's really funny when people at the quarterback position continue to get chances and they continue to be bad. And so all I can really do is point out that, hey, this is funny and this is also really bad. And maybe, you
So
know,
the train wrecks,
yeah,
basically.
and then in theory, somebody else could get the job. Right?
Well,
Well,
maybe
then you have Jameis Winston on the other side.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
right.
there's a lot of leeway for collisions and problems.
Yeah, it could be chaotic, which is always good, always great for the timeline.
And this
Chaos.
Saints
Chaos is the
defense
best.
could be about the hardest matchup
Yes.
possible. I think people just think they're going to be mediocre this year for some reason, even though their defense is loaded. They start off with Mariota, by the way, in week 1. Like, that's a tough week 1. Then you get the Tom Brady game where it's the only team that stops Tom Brady. Then you get Sam Darnold potentially in week 3. This Saints team and defense could be
Darnold.
cooking.
I was waiting for it.
They go to Tottenham. And, yeah, that Seahawks game, by the way, a rematch of some good playoff matchups and heartbreak, really, for the
Yeah.
New Orleans Saints.
Revenge. We like revenge.
Claybon's
Fun.
chaos
The
is
Beast
great.
Quake game,
I'm into
that
this.
was a tough one. All right, and then finally, number 5.
Finally, we have Thanksgiving Day, the Patriots visiting the Minnesota Vikings. And this one is circumstantial as well. By the third game on Thanksgiving, everyone is lathered up. People have had their nap, presumably. People have eaten. They've probably imbibed some substances. The phone batteries have died and been recharged. People are at their best for that final
Ooh.
game on Thanksgiving. And
I feel like we've gotten some duds. They
We have.
look good on paper, but they've
We
been
have.
blowouts. The Saints game last year was terrible.
we need the last game, not necessarily to be the best game. Probably the middle game is the game we want to hold our attention because it's competing with so many things. But that last game, let's relax. Let's talk about random stuff and also football at the same time and kind of appreciate the spectacle that dominates our lives.
Like a
You don't
really
need the
great
third
fourth
one.
Right.
Right. You don't need it to be overly complex, though.
No, you just need like
Remember the Steelers-Ravens game where it was like I was covering that, and it was like the one, hey, I'm Mike Tomlin going to run out on the field, and like Le'Veon Bell's going to get like a dangerous concussion at the end. It was like there are 18 spin-off stories. We don't need that Thanksgiving night.
So this is actually the 9th annual spectacular, but another anniversary is this is actually the 9th straight schedule release extravaganza that Mark has mentioned that game. And I know that for a fact because on the way to work this morning, I decided to crank up I think it was our first ever extravaganza. It was back in 2014. And you did bring up that game on that extravaganza.
I was traumatized.
It had been the previous Thanksgiving, and you've brought it up ever since. There was also a great moment. I'm just going to play it now. I was thinking of playing it after the show, but I want to hear it now. Where the name of this very show, where we are talking, first came into being and was first decided. Just a little piece of around the NFL history. Let's listen to it.
This is a very special Around the League podcast. It is the, let's see, what are we going to call it? It is the scheduled release special.
Bonanza.
Sounds good.
Bonanza.
All right.
Extravaganza.
Okay. What do we like, Bonanza or Extravaganza?
Extravaganza.
Extravaganza.
It is the scheduled release Extravaganza.
Bonanza. That doesn't
Rolls off the
mean
tongue.
the same thing.
It is the scheduled release Extravaganza.
So that's live workshopping. That's podcasting at its best, and it's always
We
great.
don't plan these shows.
No,
you
it's
can
always
see that.
it's always great in the Chris Wessling podcast studio to hear his voice. I was looking for like a clip where Wes just ranted about how much he hated the schedule release show, and at one point I almost prompted him to it, saying how much he hated writing about the schedule release, and instead he just went on a rant about how bad the recent Superman was. and totally didn't answer it. So which was very Wes. And
Very
it was very
Wes.
nice. I recommend it if for some reason you're a big fan of the show. Go back. That was a fun one. Gold Standard was our producer. And
I will say, in Wes's honor, that doing these shows for schedule release is the most annoying thing of the entire year because we can't get our hands on the information until like basically right before we do the show. And we have to beg people and sometimes like side text people and promise them that we won't tell anyone that we got the schedule, but we need the schedule to actually do a show talking about the schedule.
And that person who you're requesting that from is under fire from the employer, our company, that if you do share, you're essentially fired. So you're putting them in a tight spot. But you're a preparation person, so you're
I feel like though it's a sign of where we are. Like our jobs are easier, frankly, than they were 9 years ago. We were having to make a content plan and write all this stuff and do all this stuff. And you're right, we were begging and borrowing and stealing. Now I know the person to go to. I'm not gonna say it out. I just you just walk up, you ask a few days before, and we had Mark
it was
and I
delivered
had
to us.
no problem.
I mean,
In
this
advance.
year was
It
the
very
easiest
easy.
year.
Yeah. I don't know why they'd be keeping
because you're with us.
People.
Yeah.
You get with us, and you get it, and it's all.
Which is more of a statement on your acuity,
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
To manage the system, as
Right.
opposed to like when it's Colleen's actual job to release the schedule, but they don't release the
Oh my
schedule to
God.
Colleen.
There
It's
were a
like-
couple years, like years
Oh,
ago, where I would be like frantic and I would be basing my notes off of leaks on Twitter. And I'm like, the show is in like 2 hours and I still don't have the schedule. Like, how am I going to do a show?
That
Seems
is
slightly hostile on the part of the producers for you.
It's a little stressful.
Yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous. We've done this so long though that I've heard every schedule release take that there've been, and I've actually had every schedule release take that there've been. Like you go through the cycle of it. It's like at first you think you're clever for being like, hey, they're not even announcing the games. You already know the schedule. They're just announcing the order of it. Like, okay, everyone's already said that. We know that.
Yes.
Right.
Then there's the
Scheduled
other
tweet from
side
the
that's
year
like,
before.
then there's the response, which is like, well, fans schedule, they're planning around it. They do travel, and so it's very exciting. And I agree with that too. Now I just accept it. I accept the fact that the NFL is so powerful that this is even a thing, and that's ultimately going to pay for my kids to go to college.
Yeah, their prestige
So
and
I'll
the
take
power
it.
of the NFL.
I'll take it.
This day proves it. It is largely meaningless, but I do think probably there are hotels all over the place where the phone lines are blowing up when you find out what Green Bay's schedule is.
I love
My
schedule
kids-
release day.
No,
it's my favorite.
My kids are so into it. That's how I know.
Weren't you
like,
when you were young as a fan, though?
I was
big
Yeah.
time.
I don't think it wasn't nearly the same thing, but whenever it was, like you probably got it in the newspaper the
yeah,
next
USA
day.
Today or something. Right.
But yeah, that was extremely exciting. But yeah, my kids want to like write down everything. They were looking for leaks from me. I gave them like a couple this morning. I was like, don't tell the kids at school
Like hiding
that
it.
it's Bills Rams week 1.
Well,
If there's a bubbling up in the
Jeez,
Santa Monica
Greg.
school system of what's going on with the Rams schedule, we know
Greg
where that
outed
came
himself.
from.
Yeah.
Right, Raj is like looking at a Twitter account of some 9-year-old in Santa Monica that breaks this news. I'm in trouble.
all of us are just silent there.
just like,
We didn't tell our kids.
Yeah,
I didn't tell my
no.
I
kids.
told them one game and I made them promise.
Well,
not to
one
do
game is
anymore.
no different than 50. Like you
Yeah.
broke the seal.
And Ellis is super smart, so she could take that one game and extrapolate probably the rest of the schedule.
She's leaked it to the Times.
Do we have any other things we want to go over here? Maybe like the revenge games. We hit some Carson Wentz. I saw the Matt Patricia versus the Lions game, week 5. There's no one that Lions fans hate more than Matt Patricia. So if I was a Lions fan, I would find it very annoying if Matt Patricia is getting a lot of love by then as some offensive genius that is helping Mac Jones get to another level. I don't think that's a likely scenario, but that's one of many possible scenarios.
Especially when you consider that the winningest coach in the franchise's last 40 years was fired specifically because Matt Patricia was going to come in and take the next step,
Right.
and the franchise cratered, and they had to start over from scratch with a tight ends coach.
How about this one? Like this got on my radar, Yannick Ngakoue, who is now with the Colts. And like you think, oh well, you know what? He got traded away. Like he's to the Raiders. He's with his old defensive coordinator. He should be happy. No, his quote was, "They'll see how I feel when we play them. We go to their house. They'll see why they f***ed up. They'll pay."
Whoa.
Yes. That's a revenge game. A lot of these revenge games are nonsense. But how about Doug Peterson also going to Philadelphia?
What about Mike McCarthy going to Green Bay for the
Ooh,
first
I like
time?
that.
Ooh, when is
He
that?
could be under fire
Week
at that point
10.
too.
Week 10.
In
Ooh.
He's
Green
under
Bay.
fire right now.
True.
That is a great one because I know that
I do love Doug Peterson too.
the
That
Packers
was-
They need to
haven't
play that.
gotten-
What does he say? What is his little clip?
Who?
I'm annoyed now. Like,
Oh, I'm annoyed now,
I would
Angelo.
play that on loop in Philadelphia over and over while he's trying to do his job.
I love that Ngakoue thing too because it's kind of like you traded me for Rock Ya-Sin, bro.
Ooh.
Yeah, genuinely, he seems highly annoyed.
I'm pissed off, Angelo.
That's it.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
pissed off, Angelo.
We've got Bobby Wagner against the Seahawks a couple different times. He mentioned specifically he was going to be ready for that game, more excited for that week. What else do we got?
How about I don't know if this is revenge, but I'd just like to see how it goes down. Josh McDaniels versus Bill Belichick, Week 15, Sunday Night Football, Raiders Patriots.
Ooh,
And McDaniels already has a win as a head coach over Belichick.
it is
Did it
ready.
somehow
Yeah,
with
he's
Denver.
pumping his little fist on the running across the
I
field.
remember that. That was the pretty much the high point of the McDaniels era. It is wild, as you mentioned, Mark, that the Patriots have 4 primetime games in a row. It's that Thanksgiving game. We should have mentioned they get the Bills the next week in primetime. They always do that thing where 2 teams that played on Thanksgiving then get the Thursday night game the next week. It's usually the Cowboys. It's usually in a big spot. It's like December 1st. It's week 13. It's like right at the height of the season. This time it's going to be Bills, Pats. That's pretty good. Then it's at Arizona on Monday Night Football, and then, yeah, the Raiders that you mentioned. I did notice in general, and I don't want to get us in trouble here, but I thought the Thursday night Prime Video schedule was not as...
Not a lot of juice.
Not as juicy as the Fox Thursday night schedule was.
And that's why you need to
Agreed.
embrace alternate means of enjoying a football game. If things get bad, if things get a little sideways, don't be that guy that's like, oh, Thursday night football again. Like you're not watching anything else. Like what are you
Right.
like Law and Order? There's
You're
only
just
so much
hanging
you
out.
can
That's
watch.
why I think that's why there's 13 teams with 5 primetime games. That's more than it ever. It ties for the most ever. Like last year, there was 10. It's spread out. I actually like that better because the more it's spread out, the more you have some teams that are popping up that you haven't seen a ton of, and hopefully you don't have like the 2021 Bears who are like in prime time.
Well,
Thankfully, the Bears are only in 3 times. I'll take it.
3 times in 6 weeks, though, and it's like to me that stood out as a little bit obscene.
Justin Fields could make them. If you have a good quarterback or an interesting quarterback, you could be interested. So I'm
The
holding
Eagles
out hope.
also have the most home primetime games. They have 4, so I'm not pissed off about that, Angelo.
Ooh.
And then also a couple other things that I looked at. Weeks 9 and 14 are going to kill fantasy teams. Each of those weeks, 6 teams are on bye. And then this was interesting that the Packers, Steelers, Texans, and Titans each face 2 teams on their schedule that are coming off byes. And the Packers, Titans, and Steelers, like, they aren't easy teams. I think the Packers probably have it the worst because they face the Bills and the Cowboys, who both will be coming off byes. The Titans have the Chiefs and the Broncos off byes.
Yikes.
So those Steelers have the Eagles and Bengals. I mean, that's tough with the Bengals, but that's not easy. Those teams kind of got screwed.
I never like that. You never like the team that gets stuck on the road the first couple of weeks.
Mhm.
I hate that. Or if you have any 3-game road trips, that's bad. I looked and I did not see any. We didn't mention the Christmas Day games, by the way. We have a triple header on Christmas. Packers Dolphins is the first one. Then the Broncos Rams, which we had talked about, Russell Wilson here. I've gotten word back from my kids. They don't want to go to football on Christmas. So
They do not.
No.
But they
All right.
could
I was
go.
like-
They could go on New Year's Day, though.
I was like, I brought it up. I thought it'd be cool.
That's fun.
They had so much fun going Christmas week last year to Rams Seahawks, but they both were like, no, we want to stay home the whole day and play with our toys. Like, and I was like, okay, that totally makes sense.
I want to do
I'm
that
like-
too.
I just thought it'd be
Oh,
like
same.
a one-time thing, and it's like it'd be unique. Like you're only gonna go to one Christmas Day game probably ever if
Yeah.
you're here. Like I just thought, but no, they're not. Into
New
it.
Year's Day, though, that's perfect.
And then Bucks
Right.
Cardinals is the NBC game. They're doing a Sunday night football game on Christmas. They're really trying to ruin our families.
Speaking of the Cardinals, they buried them, and this had to be DeAndre Hopkins centric, but they buried them, I think, 6-7 weeks in a row at 1 p.m. out of the gate. And then they play they have a tough finish. They have a bunch of like backed up primetime games end of the year, but their final 5 games, and we know what they do at the end of the season under Cliff Kingsbury historically, include the Patriots, Broncos, Bucks, and 49ers.
Ooh.
I just don't love that for them. I mean, I like they're going to have to reverse field and like finish as strong as possible.
I think when you're trying to do like hardest schedules, easy schedules, it's really, this is the part that Wes hated, was it's impossible ahead of time. I think the best way to do it though is probably just look at which divisions play which divisions. You could kind of look at like the Vegas over-unders. That makes more sense than the strength of schedule we usually put out on NFL Network. But to me, there's a commonality of all the hard schedules. If you're in the AFC East, you got a very tough out-of-division schedule in general. So if you're trying to be an up-and-coming team like the Jets or Dolphins, like I think it's a little tougher than it would have been. And then I think the 2 Western divisions are very difficult just because they're playing each other. And outside of the division, it's a pretty tough schedule too. So I feel like the AFC East, AFC West, and NFC West, if you're any of those teams, to me it seems
AFC West has like 19 primetime games. Too.
Right, which is the most in the Super Bowl era for any division.
Whoa.
And the Dolphins, to your point, you're Mike McDaniel, you're a different Dolphins team. Out of the gate, you have the Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Bengals. And then late in the year, between week 13 and 15, 3 straight road games against the 49ers, Chargers, and Bills.
Ooh.
That feels like an arrow to the forehead.
And
That's tough.
All people really want to see is some sort of progress. I mean, of course, wins and losses ultimately matter. But if you have a tough schedule and you're competitive, hopefully franchises don't bail on new coaches.
I think that happens all the time, that people end up getting fired or hired based on like if they got a little lucky from the schedule. On the flip side, do you guys have any easy schedules that stand out to you? Anything? I think the AFC South in general, pretty easy because they get to play each other. Like you'd rather be the Colts or the Titans because then you get 4 games against the Jaguars, and their out of division schedule doesn't look too tough to me. NFC North gets to, I don't think that's that tough a division in general, and you get to play the AFC South out of division, so I like that. And the NFC East in general, I think those are the easier ones.
Yeah, I think Tampa and New Orleans made out with a very successful year with what's going on in Carolina and Atlanta, and them being good teams as well. Of course, that means they have to deal with each other, but you get 2 on the other side, and I think that makes things easy.
And with the Saints, the one thing that kind of stood out to me was week 7, they play the Cardinals in I think a primetime game, or it's a Thursday night game. And that should be the first game that D-Hop is back off suspension. So that has a little
bad luck there. So one of the first things I did while we're talking suspensions, looking at the schedule, is like, okay, what do they do with the Browns? Because I was just curious
they buried them.
If they were going to strategize around Watson's potential suspension. But I didn't really have that takeaway. My bigger takeaway just from a football angle was their schedule is loaded up with their easiest games on paper early, and that is extremely that could be advantageous to the Browns. I don't know if that was intentional, but they open at Panthers, home for Jets. Then you do have a primetime game, so if you were a conspiracy theorist, they're not hiding the Browns there in week 3 while Watson could be suspended. That might be Jacoby Brissett.
Well, that's where you'd want them to play. You don't want to have to talk about Deshaun Watson. So I think, if anything, that's when you want the primetime game.
That's a good point. And then they're at Atlanta. After that, their schedule, like the rest of the division, I think is extremely challenging. But that is the easiest 4-game stretch of the year. For the Browns, and it might line up exactly with Deshaun Watson's suspension, but we have no idea.
I do find it like
the NFL. The longer this goes, the more I'm concerned the NFL is not going to do anything about this.
Right. I find it confusing that the league would cater to the Cleveland Browns because they were the team that went and got Deshaun Watson and trying to give them cupcakes while he's suspended.
Yeah, I think there's so many possible permutations of this schedule that we could draw any kind of conclusion, right, based on how we want to view it.
Claybon, why do you have the cord wrapped around your neck of the headset?
He does this on a frequent basis.
So if it were to fall off, it wouldn't fall far? Or?
Well, and you're tugging on the cord.
Well, the thing is, the West clip made me think of of how much Chris hated the whole pin the thing behind your head.
Yes.
So it just makes me think, like, let's make this as ridiculous as possible. Let's drape this entire
It's just
cord.
not a good image.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
We
but-
are big Claybon fans. It's disturbing.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
right that we probably shouldn't read too much into it, but I think you can absolutely read into that they only have 2 primetime games.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, in a world where Deshaun Watson just got traded there and he had never been accused of all of his sexual assault and misconduct, the Browns would be in primetime 5 times.
Absolutely.
They would be a premier team. So the other primetime game is in Week 8. We don't know if Watson will be back by then necessarily either. That's against the Bengals. But, yeah, that was really surprising. They are at 1 p.m. 15 times.
This schedule,
more than any team, I think,
this looks
other than
like
the Lions.
Cleveland's schedule during the 18 years that they'd win about 4 games a season.
Yeah.
And hopefully, right, there was no decision made by anybody that would try to hide from facilitating a conversation around sexual violence.
I mean, I think that's absolutely
because I mean
the
we should
idea.
do that anyway. We should do that regardless of whether Deshaun Watson is playing football. But hopefully, it's just there's so many scheduled permutations, and if this was Baker Mayfield, then he would be like, oh, this is a personal offense. They don't want us. Nobody believes in us. I'm Baker Mayfield. Yeah. But like instead, this maybe he'll get traded.
Wow. So we get Baker. Baker's going to join the Panthers. He's going to beat the Browns in Week 1. Then we're going to have the Sessler-Hansis Bowl, and Zach Wilson's going to beat the Browns in Week 2.
Right.
And
Save for
then,
the fact, Greg, that I'm not a Browns fan anymore.
I know.
But
I'm
fair
not.
enough.
Now you're going to actually. I don't know if you'll enjoy it, but it's not going to bother you like it normally would. And then they would be 0-2. Heading to the Steelers on Thursday night in Week 3. That would be a tough situation, and the football gods, maybe they would be speaking there. But that's too much of a downer to go out on. Let's go out on something positive. Colleen,
the
just
pilot
say
landing
something
the plane
positive.
that had no experience. How about that?
Yeah, shout out to that guy.
That guy was incredible. It was a single-engine Cessna flying from the Bahamas to Florida, and this guy gets on the air traffic control radio and is like, "We have a serious problem here. Our pilot is incapacitated." And the air traffic controller was like, "Roger, what's your position?" And the guy was like, "I have no idea. I don't know how to fly a plane. I don't know any of this." And they ended up, the guy who was controlling the traffic was also a flight instructor, and he literally talked him through landing the plane, and he landed it like beautifully.
When did this happen?
This happened yesterday.
You are breaking the news to me. That is an exciting story. And you have been a pilot before. People don't know
I'm
this.
a student pilot. So, and my dad's a flight instructor and an air traffic controller. So this took about a half hour away of my morning where I was supposed to be looking over the schedule. But I was like, wait, he did what? I need to hear the audio. I need to see the video. Who is this guy? That's amazing. Like, yeah. So pretty impressive.
Of course, my brain is so ruined. The first thing I thought was, oh, well, they were ferrying some sort of illegal material, and the deal got bad in midair. This person knocks the other person out, and then feigns ignorance to the entire experience of flying in order to escape the authorities.
That's the heat and light pod.
That's so highly possible. Everything you just said, like, it just is.
Mark, any final thoughts?
The only thing that I would like to see outside of football, I mean, if that's where we're going, is what if we
That's why I
had
took it.
like a schedule release on Earth where like you find out on like January 1st for like 2023, like, holy shit, like Halloween's on June 6th this year, or like Christmas is on March 9th. And like we not every year, but like 1 year where we like that's the only thing that could be bigger than what the NFL has created. If it went down and just affected all of us.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm changing my birthday this year, so that works.
Keep people on their toes. Never let them know where you're going.
Right. That was so beautiful that we need to make that an episode. I'd at least do a schedule release of like our podcast and maybe our world. We could release some dates for what's coming up. I think that is a $1 million idea. We're not going to top
We
that.
could get a sponsor for that.
I think we
for
should
sure.
go out on that. Graver, your Titans are not in prime time, 5 times maximum, so that gives your team another thing to complain about.
The Titans Twitterverse will be on fire, no doubt.
But they're in there plenty. This has been a thin slice of heaven.
Yeah,
as
go Sixers.
Dave Damashek would say.
Game 6.
Go Celtics Friday night. Thank you, Patrick, for coming in, for
thank
tagging in. Thank you to Rachel Bonetta, Colleen, Wolf, Mark Sessler. We'll see you next week. Heed the call.
All of this makes sense. I am on board with it. Look, you want to race to the schedule and find out your road trips, plan all that. Put a W and L next to every team on your schedule. I get all of that. Just don't ask me to analyze it 5 months. There's no analysis necessary. Just enjoy the schedule being released.
All right.